Everyone. My name is Michael Berry. I am the director of the Center for Chinese Studies at UCLA, and it's our pleasure to host today's virtual event on industrial polyphony, voices and sounds in the poetry of contemporary China's worker. And I just want to give a short advertisement for our center before we begin. We do have a series of events which you can access via our website. And I encourage you to sign up to our mailing list to get information on future events. We also have a YouTube channel with previous events where you can watch some of our the events that we hosted, especially during the COVID period, are all online, and we appreciate everyone's support. Our next event will be next week on chip wars, and so please, you can tune into that. But for now, I'm going to hand the podium over to my colleague, Professor Shumei Shi from the Department of Asian Languages and Cultures here at UCLA, who will be introducing today's speaker. I also want to acknowledge Professor Lothar von Falkenhausen, who is our kind of co-chair of today's event, and he's also the one who first suggested that we host the speaker. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Professor Shi.
Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you to the Center for Chinese Studies for organizing and hosting this event. I'm pleased to be here. I teach at UCLA, and Michael has already introduced me, and I'm very pleased also to be introducing the speaker today, and Professor Giuseppa Tamburello, who is an associate professor of Chinese language and literature at the Department of Humanities at the University of Palermo in Italy. She's been very active. She's one of the kind of the pioneers in trying to establish Chinese studies across Italian universities, at least very active in two of the universities, at the University of Lecce, which is now called Università del Salento, and then currently at the University of Palermo, which is also her hometown. So it must be really nice to return to one's hometown and be able to teach at the university. I know that must be such a privilege. Both of these programs are growing, they're thriving, and and at the same time, she's also been teaching various places, and currently she is visiting professor at UC Berkeley. And she also visited as a visiting professor at various universities in China, including Capital Normal University in Beijing and Sichuan University in Chengdu. As you can kind of gather from her lecture title today, her area of research is on modern and contemporary Chinese short stories and poetry. And she has written and published, numerous papers in 4 different languages: in Italian, of course, her native language, and English, with which she'll be presenting her lecture today, and French, and also Mandarin Chinese. As you can see, we American scholars always feel very ashamed that our European colleagues use and write in so many languages. We're very envious and in awe of that. Among her most recent publications, she edited Words in Poetry, Early and Late Poems of Haizi, and another book, which is a monograph entitled The Contemporary Writer and Their Suicide, which was published just last year by Springer. And another book on migrant workers, poets of contemporary China, poems, which is published in Italian. And I can try to read the title in Italian. I think it reads something like, because Italian is pretty, it seems to me that you just read the letters and the vowels, right? Tell me if I'm doing it wrong, completely off the mark. Lavoratori Migranti Poeti della Cina Contemporanea and Poesie. Anyway, you have to correct me, which was also published in 2023. So you can see, she's extremely prolific and active. We're very pleased to have her here giving this lecture. And today her lecture is entitled Industrial Polyphony, Voices and Sounds in the Poetry of Contemporary China's Worker. Please, let's all welcome Professor Tamburello.
Thank you very much to all of you. There has been a lot of work done around this meeting of today, and I really feel very happy. Also because to listen to what people say about you makes you feel like, wow, not bad after all. So thank you very, very, very much. In particular, I would like to thank Professor Michael Berry. I'm having the pleasure to meet these people live for the first time on this occasion. It is the same for Professor Shumei Shi, whose works I've been reading, Professor Chaohua Wang, with whom I hope to begin a kind of cooperation on the field of the students' work. And I want to thank also Esther Zhou, who has been developing the liaison work in a very detailed way. And above all, I would like to thank Professor Lothar von Falkenhausen, because it is true that this kind of meetings, they happen because of professional reasons. But in this case, we have also something like a piece of life in common, because we were Liu Xuesheng students, foreign students in China in the same period. So this is the first time that we see each other again after such a long time. So, all these things together, for me, make this meeting very emotional also. And therefore, thank you very much for your very warm welcome. As has been said so far, my field of interest in research has been the short stories to begin with, modern and contemporary Chinese short stories. But then bit by bit, my interest has been shifting towards Chinese modern and contemporary poetry. I began with the translations of poets of the Menglong trend, and so the Misty poets. And bit by bit, it has been moving also towards the modern poetry, which is also one of the reasons why I'm now visiting a research scholar at Berkeley. The research topic will be a survey of those poets who, at the beginning of the last century, went from China to the States. And after getting back to China, they produced a lot of changes in their own poetry, by this activating a process of transformation of Chinese poetry in the mainland. But today, my topic will be about this book that has been mentioned before, and that, as you can see in the cover, has a photo that I took on one of the subways in China, where very clearly two workers are seen next to a young woman who is busy, playing with her mobile telephone. And in fact, we do use these mobile telephones, maybe not every time thinking about the fact that they are produced in China by the Chinese workers. And this is, we'll get back to this. Before developing my topic, I also would like to say that the kind of theoretical approach that I use to investigate Chinese poetry or Chinese texts in general is based on the stylistic criticism of Leo Spitzer. There are two aspects of his thinking which are especially attractive to me. And one is related to the kind of relationship that you have to have with the text that you are analyzing, which has to be a relationship of love of the text that you choose. And the second aspect is that any unexpected element in the language of a poet or a writer is the starting point of a reading of that poetry itself. And I found this approach extremely productive, especially when dealing with Chinese poetry that, belonging as it does to a completely different way of thinking and to such a different culture from ours, that to refer to a method whatever that method is, becomes to me, or has always been for me, very, very important in order to give myself a reference in the work that I do. This scene, I will get back to these mobile telephones that we use and we renovate maybe every 6 months, and that are produced in China. The reason why this is possible is related to the open door policy that was initiated by Deng Xiaoping in 1978 with the idea of developing agriculture, science and technology, industry, and the sector of national defense through a program of reform, of economic reform, and through a policy of opening to the West in order to introduce in China new technologies that could help rebuild the country after the 10 years of the Cultural Revolution that had produced a massive destruction in the whole country. Following to 1978, at the beginning of the 80s and until 1984, the Chinese government was busy in opening areas in China where advanced production could be settled. That was the time when in China were created the ZES, the special economic zones. They were mostly concentrated in areas of Guangdong province, in cities like Shantou, Shenzhen, and Zhuhai. And in the area of Guangdong, there was this appearance of the so-called 4 small tigers, the Guangdong Sixiaohu. They were the cities of Dongguan, which will be afterwards known as the Shijie Gongchang, the world's factory, and then the city of Zhongshan, Shunde, and Nanhai. The name chosen for these 4 special economic zones, these small ones, was recalling the Yazhou Sixiaolong, the 4 small dragon of Asia, which were, dragon of Asia, which were South Korea, Singapore, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. So it was a kind of parallel naming after these big countries. Other economic zones were opened in Fujian, in the city of Xiamen, and then on the island of Hainan. So we see that the whole southern port area of China gave rise to these areas where factories could develop. So the delta of the Pearl River, the delta of the Yangtze, and the whole area of Shenzhen became areas of a high concentration of factories. During the 90s, following to this development, the reform of the economy produced a kind of a sense of entrepreneurship in the people. Therefore, in these times, during the 90s, in fact, we have to somehow imagine enormous amount of people moving from the most internal areas of China towards the coastal areas. And the composition of all these people was including very many kinds of people. Most of them were young people who, having obtained their degree at school, could not find a job. And then they went to these coastal areas in the hope of getting jobs and, with the idea of creating a better perspective for their own lives. But there were also people who could not work anymore in the countryside because, it was not productive anymore. And they also went to these industrial areas with the same kind of hopes. And our cell phones, most of the times, are to be linked to the activities of the Foxconn International Holdings Limited, which is a multinational of Taiwan that produces pieces or instrument objects for Amazon, Apple, Motorola, Nokia, Xiaomi, and which created the first factory in China in 1988, particularly in Longhua, which is a place not far from Shenzhen, which employed at that time 300,000 workers. So this kind of numbering gives a little bit an idea of what could be the landscape of this area when multiplied for the very many factories which were doing their activities at that time. Now, this is a little bit to give a kind of background to the development of this poetry from the workers in the factories. In fact, poetry, and in my opinion, poetry is the literary genre that better represent China, has been occupying a specific place in the literary production of China from the Shi Jing, the Book of Odes, until today, in fact. And whereas in the ancient times or in the past, poetry was a territory for the intellectuals, thanks to the discourses on literature and art of President Mao of 1942, also workers were empowered into the possibility of writing poetry. With the discourse on poetry and art, if we want to put it very simple, Mao Zedong makes it clear that whenever we want to work to support the development of socialism and then communism in China, it is necessary to obtain the cooperation of the intellectuals. So a real communist intellectual works in the interests of the party and works for the masses. But even more, even the masses, according to Mao Zedong, can use literature to give expression to themselves. And because the people are those who use the right language for expressing themselves. And somehow we can see this, the way it works in a poem like this one that was published in the literary magazine Shekan in 1976, where we see that socialism can advance and advances in an environment where the oil pits, the jinjia, are to be seen in rows, and where the noise of the drilling of the oil becomes the soundtrack of this poetry. 专辑轰鸣转天外, and 毛主席指引大情路. So we see that the workers, this is a poem that we don't know who has been writing it. It was published, but it, the author is not known. But it is a poem that shows how the workers can use their daily life as a way to demonstrate that socialism is being built and that socialism is the direction towards which it's necessary to walk. In the 90s, the workers who move from the internal areas of China and go to the coastal area, as a matter of fact, are confronted with a very, very deep disillusionment. They do work in conditions that are not very ideal. They have shifts of work which are very difficult to undergo. They are confronted with accident casualties during their work due to tiredness. and they don't have a place where to live. Most of the times they sleep outside under the bridges, or they are in conditions which are not very, very good, in fact. And therefore, this kind of situation brings them into find an expression for what they are experiencing in poetry. Therefore, the poetry of the workers that I've been collecting in this book, where I've been presenting the translation of poems by 24 workers. In fact, when published, it has been attracting the attention of many, many scholars who have mostly paid attention to the social-cultural issues that arise from this kind of poetry. In this slide, I've been collecting, or I've been listing the names of some of the scholars who have been dealing with this poetry of the workers, which is called in Chinese 打工十个, so the poetry of those who do the manual work. And among them, for instance, there is Justina Jakusic, who has been interested in the 打工妹, which is to say the young woman or the women who are engaged in the work of the factories, who not only are exposed to the exploitation of their work, but many times they're also exploited from the point of the sexual harassment. And this is one of the topics that is being developed in her studies. Pamela Hunt has been instead dealing more with the masculinity, which is to say with the existential condition of these young men who are working in these factories and who cannot actually give a full development to their wishes and to their masculinity, so to say. Federico Picerni, he's also Italian. He has been talking about the discrimination, and the discrimination as seen in that point where society and literature in an urban context get mingled. In this area, very often the element of discrimination is based on the language factor. People who bring with themselves their language of origin, they have difficulties in communicating with the people of the urban, in an urban context, by this becoming discriminated. Hao Ming Gong has been proposing this aspect of alienation. We can work to build up socialism, we can work to produce for the communist country, but we still experience this aspect of alienation, which, according to President Mao, should not exist in a socialist country. Another issue which is very, very important for these workers is the issue of the hukou. Jemima Steinfeld and Anna Leung have been writing about this issue, because hukou is obtained when you are a resident of that specific city, specific village. But when you move to another place, which is not your birthplace, then it is much more difficult to obtain the hukou, this permit of residence, and therefore it is very difficult to have access to the social services for the people. And Liang Hong has been bringing on a series of interviews, and therefore has been depicting from a very direct description the lives of these workers. So you notice here that this poetry gives room for analysis in the social and anthropological fields. More scholars have also been dealing with other aspects, like, for instance, Wan Ning Sun. She has been talking about the suzhi, the quality, the professional quality of these workers. Not always they are equipped with a very good suzhi, and therefore also the kind of works that they can do are normally the most, the lowest level works. And so there is a little room for improvement also in their conditions of life. Yu Haibo and Yu Tianqi Kiki, they have been talking about the Zhongguo Fangao. Fangao is the translation of the Dutch painter Van Gogh. And in a village, in the village of Dafen, many workers are reproducing important works of art. And it is particularly interesting to consider this aspect because when, on one hand, these workers are there to copy masterpieces of art, on the other hand, when they are interviewed, when they are asked, the counter question that they pose is, okay, when we are those who are reproducing these international masterpieces, aren't we ourselves artists? So this is again now introducing another field of interest in the analysis that arises from the analysis of these poems. And Paola Voci, together with Whitney Wong, they've also dealt with this aspect in the reproduction of works of art. Qin Xiaoyu and Wu Feiyue, they have been working on this 我的诗篇, which is to say the verse of us, which is a collection of the poetry curated by these people who belong to this world. And then from this work, also a documentary film has been produced, which is titled Iron Moon, 铁做的月亮. And it is a documentary of 2015. And so after this work, there has been then an anthology and also a documentary film. To this work has also contributed Eleanor Goodman. And thanks to this cooperation, the book has got nominations on the international scene, by this bringing to the international attention the world of the workers. Julian Wong has been producing another documentary film, which is from 2016, and that is a Plastic China, Suliao Wangguo, that, you know, as the name says, is dealing with this overproduction of plastic goods that also create lots of pollution. And other developments that have been sprouting around this theme of the workers' poetry is also the theater work World Factory, 世界工厂 by Zhao Quan, who in this theater work has also been inviting workers themselves to recite, to be actors in the piece. And to complete this kind of, you know, survey of the different works that have been happening around this theme of the workers' poetry, I will mention also Michiel van Grevel, who has been referring to this poetry with the term butlers. But there has been a lot of discussion about the term, because the term, in fact, characterizes the workers from Australia, and therefore is too territory characterized to be easy to be used in describing the workers of China. But this short survey that I wanted to present today has the aim to show how broad is the field of interest that is being created by the appearance of this poetry from the Chinese workers in today's China. It is, for what concerns my intervention in this field, besides the work of translation that I've done, and also maybe upon this could be interesting to know that I was asked by Zheng Xiaoqiong, one of the women poets among the most representatives in these years, to actually take into consideration these 24 poets. The translations were made by me into Italian and by two of my colleague translators in German. And all the translations were published in the literary magazine from Canton, which is Zuoping, where Zheng Xiaoqiong works as an editor. I think that it's quite interesting, the fact that in the book that I've been producing, there are both the Italian translation and the original version in Chinese. Therefore, this book can also be used by people who want to refer to the Chinese version only. So it's very handy, so to say. And because these poets are 24, and because the theme that they develop and the styles that they use are so diverse and so many, I've been using the word polyphony in my title. It's such a big, it's such a multifaceted world, this world of the worker poets, that it's really a kind of music of experiences. In my work, I've been trying also to define some kind of peculiarities. If we go through these 24 poets, it is possible to notice how each of them describes or treats or deals with specific themes. And most of the times they treat different themes within their own production. But if we just look with some attention to these themes, I think that we can underline a few main directions. One direction is the one that deals with the experience of leaving their village of birth. So what is very peculiar in this aspect of the workers who move from the internal areas of China to the coastal area is the fact that they, in fact, are determining a kind of internal immigration phenomenon. And in this phenomenon, they leave their own villages, they leave the families behind, and they go towards a new area unknown to them, with the only hope to be able to obtain a better life or to work for a better life. But this detachment from the village that they leave is a kind of trauma. And it is one of the most frequent themes to be found in their production. So when they leave their village and they move to the big cities and they experience this kind of trauma, then two elements become a kind of referential aspect in their poetry. On one hand, we find the countryside where they come from, and on the other hand, we find the city, the urban landscape. And these two landscapes are not easy to coordinate. Actually, it is enough to see a thread of grass that is appearing in the concrete of a walking path on a main road of the big city to just get back to the images of their own village and of the grass that is growing in their village. And when the village appears, also the sounds of the verses of the animals, of the birds, of the dogs are resounding, and also the perfume of the flowers, the beauty of the fruit trees. And this is all in contrast with the concrete of the big skyscrapers of the city. They work and they produce these skyscrapers, these bridges, where the rich people can live and can also cross. But the workers only give their blood and their sweat to these buildings in which they will never be living. And this creates, again, another very deep nostalgia for the countryside, where they have their own whole house and where they belong, and the hard life that they experience in the big cities. Another very important theme that is being developed in their poems is that related to the working conditions. I already said before that the working shifts are very demanding. There is no time to rest. There is no time to have a proper lunch. Tiredness is one of the most basic feeling that they experience. If I were in the presence, I would ask someone from the audience to help me reading something. But maybe among the audience there is also Victor. Is Victor there? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Victor, could you please make everyone listen to the poem Working Conditions?
The working conditions?
Yes, it's the poem by Liu Dongwu.
Okay.
Trial period, sorry.
It's 试用, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. 试用，刘东武。3个月，拉开的仅仅是序幕，试用期只有开始，没有结束。从一个日子抵达另一个日子，像从一棵树抵达另一棵树。在钢筋水泥的丛林里，打工的人不敢一叶障目，要认真的过好每一分钟，每一天都是一张考卷，每一分钟都是考卷的一道题目。打工的所有岁月，其实都叫试用。
Thank you, Victor. Do you also have the English version of the poem?
Yeah.
Okay. So I will be reading the Italian version and I'll let you the English version for later. Is that okay?
Okay.
Thank you. So in Italian, it sounds like this. Periodo di prova. 3 mesi sono solamente il prologo. Il periodo di prova ha solamente un inizio, non ha una fine. Da un giorno si arriva a un altro giorno, così come si passa da un albero a un altro, nella giungla di cemento armato. I lavoratori non permettono che neanche una foglia sia di ostacolo. Trascorrono ogni minuto con abnegazione. Ogni giorno è un test d'esame, ogni minuto è argomento di test. Qualsiasi periodo trascorso lavorando è sempre definito come periodo di prova. And maybe, Victor, you can read the English so that we also give everyone the possibility to get along with the poem.
Sure.
Thank you.
Trial period, 刘东武. 3 months are just the prologue. The trial period has only one beginning. It doesn't have an end. From one day to another day, just as you go from one tree to another. In a reinforced concrete jungle, the workers don't allow even a leaf to be an obstacle. They spend every minute with self-sacrifice. Every day is an exam test. Every minute is a test topic. Any time spent working, it is always defined as a trial period.
Thank you very much, Victor. So as you can see in these poems, the experience of the work is considered as a trial test continuously. There is not one single moment when a worker can relax his attention. And therefore, it's very demanding on them. And these kind of poems that describe the living conditions and the working conditions of the workers are among the main themes that they develop in their poetry. Another aspect, which is one of the themes of these poems, is the accidents, the casualties which are happening in the workplace. Because of tiredness, because of disattention due to lack of concentration, because as I said, tiredness sometimes plays very bad tricks, then an accident can happen. And then, workers get wounded. Sometimes to such an extent that they lose their lives. And this is, again, a very, very important topic that is coming back in practically all of the poets. And one more theme that I have been defining or indicating for these poets is the denied dreams of the young people. So these young people, both boys and girls, or young women and young men, they go to the big cities to work and to get money and to have a better life. But very soon they will discover that this is not going to be the case. And this kind of disillusionment is characterizing some of the poems. In order to give you an idea of the dreams of these young people, I would like to invite also Tsan. Tsan, are you there? Hello. Can you open your mic?
Who are you trying to call on?
Tsan Xiong. He has been raising the hand, so he's listened to us, and he was going to read a poem by Wu Xia.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
All right. Yes, we can hear you. Would you like to read then the poem by? Actually, we can do the other way. Maybe you can read the English first. Then I will give you the Italian, and then you can read the Chinese, so that there is a better appreciation, because we have been playing with the sounds before. Shall we do that?
Yes, it's a poem by Wu Xia.
Yes. You have the English.
Dress, yes, dress
Okay.
with trumps.
Yeah.
The packaging worksheet is well lit. With my hand, I hold the iron, collects all the heat of the hand. First of all, I have to iron the strap so that when you put them on your shoulders, they won't bother you. So I began in running, starting from the waist. Such a pretty waist, you can put a nice clean hand on it. Along a tree-lined avenue, gently caressing a quiet love. So I stretch out my skirt. I want to iron every single crease to the same size, making it stand on the shore of the lake or on the meadow. Waiting for the wind to blow, you can run away, but causes the skirt to rise in a circle like a flower. Well, I have to finish work. I have to wash my switch socket. Factory closes. I folded it. I pack it. The dress with the shrimp will be shipped out of the factory to a certain market in a certain trendy store in the afternoon or evening, waiting for that one you. Girl, I love you.
So the worker is ironing this dress. The dress will go in the big cities, in the big shops, in the fashion shops, will be on the body of a beautiful girl. But this is only the image that the worker sees of the shape that her work will take. It's a dream. It will not become true, but it is an image that she herself builds up. And as a dream, it represents the wish that will not be fulfilled. So in Italian it is abito con le bretelline. L'officina per le confezioni è ben illuminata. Con la mano impugno il ferro da stiro, raccoglie tutto il calore della mia mano. Prima di tutto devo stirare le bretelline, di modo che quando le poggerai sulle spalle non ti daranno fastidio. Quindi comincio a stirare a partire dalla vita. Un vitino così grazioso, ci si può poggiare una bella mano pulita, lungo un viale alberato, accarezzando delicatamente un amore tranquillo. Quindi distendo la gonna, voglio stirare ogni singola piega della stessa misura, facendoti stare sulla riva di un lago o su un prato, ad aspettare che il vento soffi. Tu puoi anche scappare via, ma fa sì che la gonna si sollevi a cerchio come un fiore. Devo però finire di lavorare. Io devo lavare i miei abiti di fabbrica zuppi di sudore. Io l'ho piegato, l'ho impacchettato, l'abito con le bretelline. Sarà spedito fuori dalla fabbrica, verso un certo mercato, in un certo negozio alla moda, in un pomeriggio o in una sera, aspettando quell'unica te, ragazza sconosciuta. Ti amo. And now Zan will read for you the English version.
You mean the Chinese version?
Yes.
Okay. 巫峡吊带裙，包装车间灯火通明。我手握电熨斗，急去我所有的手温。我要先把吊带熨平，挂在你肩上，不会勒疼你。然后从腰身开始熨洗，多么可爱的腰身，可以安放一只白净的手。林荫道上轻抚一种安静的爱情，最后把裙裾展开。我要把每个褶皱的宽度熨得都相等，让你在湖边或者草坪上等待风吹。你也可以奔跑，但一定要让裙裾飘起来，带着弧度，像花儿一样。而我要下班了，我要洗一洗汗湿的厂服，我已把它折叠好，打了包装。吊带裙，它将被运出车间，走向某个市场、某个时尚的店面，在某个下午或者晚上，等待唯一的你，陌生的姑娘，我爱你。
Thank you very much, Xiaozang. Thank you both, Victor and Zhang. So you have been listening most probably to the sounds of these poems, to the themes that they develop. And another part of my work has also been underlining the kind of resonances that these poems have with poetry written in a working class environment, but in different countries and in different times. And I will be mentioning the poetry in Industrial Revolution in England during the second half of the 18th century. And you most probably are all acquainted with titles like David Copperfield, Oliver Twist, and Hard Times by Charles Dickens. Maybe you also know The Cry of the Children by Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and also The Song of the Shirt by Thomas Hood. When reading these works, and when referring in particular to the poems by Browning and Hood, The Cry of the Children and Song of the Shirt, already from the title, we have an idea that we are entering the world of the working class. And when we do actually read the English texts of these poems, we will find many elements that are resonating with the Chinese workers of today. As a very quick example from The Cry of the Children by Elizabeth Barrett Browning, I will read you a couple of lines, and you will see that, you know, immediately the factory is introduced to us. So just a few lines, like for all day, we drag out burden tiring through the cold dark underground, or all day we drive the wheels of iron in the factories round and round. It continues like for all the day, the wheels are droning, turning, their wind comes in our faces. And if you would not know that this has been written in the 18th century, you could easily think that it has been written by Chinese workers of today, because the iron is there, the repetition of the noises, like, round and round, the darkness of the environment. These are all things that are to be found also in the Chinese poetry. And in the Song of the Shirt, we also have things like lines like, "Oh men with sisters dear, oh men with mothers and wives, it is not linen you are wearing out, but human creatures' lives. Stitch, 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 in poverty, hunger, and dirt, sewing at once with a double thread, a shroud as well as a shirt." So I could not make a very detailed study on these elements, but still it is impressively interesting to consider that in different times and in different places, the factory's work produces the same kind of reactions in the workers. And oddly enough, I also have been getting to the post-Second World War in Italy, where some of the people, the people that I've been listing in this slide, they have all dealt with the workers and the factories. Leonardo Sinisgalli, in that time, post the Second World War, Italy had to reconstruct, physically reconstruct the country, which had been destroyed by the bombing, by the war, and was totally in disarray. So, people had to work. And because they had to work, they were also working in the factories. And because they were working in the factories, they were exploited. Leonardo Sinisgalli, in his L'operaio e la macchina, the worker and the machines, he analyzes the relationship between the human being and the machine. And also for Sinisgalli, as well as for the Chinese workers, we observe a process of reification of the worker and of personification of the machines that are kind of living their own lives, in fact. Stefano Vilardo has been analyzing in Tutti dicono Germania, Germania, the problems arising for people who leave their country and move to another country, in this case, Germany, where it is very difficult to be recognized as people with an individuality. Paolo Volponi, in Memoriale, he has been tackling the problem of alienation and of life conditions. Whereas Nanni Balestrini in Vogliamo Tutti introduces an aspect which is quite important, because introduces the workers' demonstrations and fights for their own right. And so we want everything. Giorgio Barberi Squarotti, together with Carlo Ossola, they have been publishing a series titled Letteratura e Industria, Literature and Industry, where they also bring together this literary production about workers in the industry. Ada Negri, a woman poet, she published Fatalità, Casualties, in which she tackles the problem of the accidents happening in a factory. Vittorio Sereni, in Una visita in fabbrica, a visit in a factory, underlines the problem of the workers that are considered like a component of the big machineries that are used for production. And Luigi Di Ruscio, finally, titles his collection of poems, Poesie operaie, poesie, workers' poetry, in fact, poetry that are workers themselves, in which, for instance, the nostalgia or the smoke of the cigarettes that are being smoked by the workers become kind of topos of his production. So it is the reason why I have been underlining these aspects is connected to the fact that sometimes we are confronting a presentation of China as being, you know, something very peculiar. A very popular word in these years is the word 特色, peculiar, particular. But when it comes to the situation of the workers in the Chinese factories of today, we find out that this peculiarity, in one way or the other, is not there anymore, because even in experiences like the English one and also the Italian one in different epochs and with different people, in fact, transmit the same kind of problematics. And when we go towards the conclusion of this presentation, I would like to say that there are many, many themes that could be further developed, like the style of this poetry. What do the workers consider poetry? And how do they develop in the written part a poetic style? But this is a very rich field, again, of investigation that maybe we can for some time skip, at least on this occasion. But definitely what these poets have in mind is the possibility to witness their own condition. In particular, Zheng Xiaoqiong, this woman poet, has published a collection of poems, which each one has as title the name of a woman worker. The living condition, the existential condition of this worker is so that it is easy to consider them components of a machinery without an identity. And Zheng Xiaoqiong wants to underline the identity of these women workers by giving her poems, each one as a title, the name of a worker, a woman worker. At the same time, this poetry is a poetry that, if on one hand is witnessing this existential situation, on the other hand, it is also a photography of the working class world. And it is also a thanks to this poetry, in England, the Royal Commission of Inquiry into Children's Employment was developed in 1842. In Italy, thanks to this poetry, the unions were funded, were established, so that they could protect the rights of the workers. And in China, there have been also intervention by the government concerning the administration of the hukou, concerning the legal assistance to these workers, concerning the medical assistance to these workers. Because, as I said before, if you don't have the hukou, you also cannot have access to the facilities for the people. And also changes have been produced also for what concerns children's care. Whenever these workers are able to bring their families from the village to the city, because of the hukou problems, they cannot have their children going to school. So also this is a problem. But in all of these fields, the Chinese government has also been bringing some actions forward. So in a way, what we can say also is the fact that from a material product, which is what is being produced in the factories, this poetry or these poems produce a kind of immaterial product, which is the influence that they have on the audience, on the people, and on the administration, for instance. And from their individual condition, thanks to their poetry, a social awareness is being created. About this, I also would like to add one last aspect. Recently, at the beginning of April, I was invited to speak about this poetry at this festival di letteratura working class, to the festival, to the literature festival of the working class in Campi Bisenzio in Florence. Campi Bisenzio is a small village nearby Florence, where in 2021, the workers of a factory named GKN were fired overnight with an email message. Since that moment, the workers have been occupying the factory. And because this has created a very deep solidarity among the people in the area of the village, last year, a publisher has been having this idea of having this festival of literature of the working class in order to bring the attention towards this situation in Campi Bisenzio. And this year, it has been the second edition. Interestingly enough, during the 3 days, every day there were 4 different sessions of presentations. The presentation of the Chinese working class poetry was done on the last day as a first presentation in the morning, and after followed also discussion. And the very interesting point was that the people who were in the audience, they have heard about movements of protest in China by the side of the workers, and they consider it a source of inspiration for movements of protests in Italy. When things like this were said, I had to think about the 1968 movements in Europe that were also inspired by the Cultural Revolution in China, by this, creating upon a kind of maybe not very realistic understanding of the Cultural Revolution in China. But it is only and simply to say that this poetry of the workers in China today is a poetry that shows how there is the need to reconsider our approach to industrial production beyond any territorial or cultural boundary. And with this, I think I can conclude my presentation.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Tamburello, for that very, very expansive, comparative, contextualized look at, Chinese workers' poetry. I think, I'm sure all of us in the audience, we've really learned a lot about Chinese workers' poetry and the ins and outs of, all the kind of the larger implications and social kind of how actually this work raises social awareness and has impact on social change. As a literature professor, some of the questions that we always have to justify in our teaching is, how is literature relevant, in the world? And I think you have given us, just absolutely kind of answers that we want our students to hear. That, you write a poem, and the poem, can have social change, can lead to, social change, at least, in terms of raising awareness of the situation of the workers. So I'd like to invite people in the audience, to pose questions. Since this is a webinar, I presume that the questions should be typed into the Q&A section. Right, Esther? That's how we're doing it?
Yeah, people can type in the Q&A, or if someone wants, they can raise their hand and we could unmute them if they would like to directly ask their question.
Yeah, I would prefer that.
Yeah, so either way works. And while we wait for the first, the questions to come in, I'll take the privilege of being the chair of the session. And I'd like to ask a question to Professor Tamburello. I really appreciate how you put this in a comparative context and looking at this, at British and Italian examples, and also how in different periods of history, the awareness that that these, such work has helped to kind of raise, led to very specific and concrete changes in the conditions of the workers in the factories. So that was very, I think, important for people to become aware that China is not an exception. And I think that's the point you were trying to make as well. So, so my question is more in terms of what you have said in the beginning in terms of your methodology. And you mentioned that you're interested in stylistic criticism of Leo Spitzer, who, of course, was also kind of takes a philological approach to literary texts. And so I'm curious, I'm sure you do this with poetry in your other work. But today, since you're introducing this very big subject, and so I'm just curious how, in terms of your kind of more formal and textual analysis of Chinese workers' poetry, what are some of the kind of the insights or conclusions, that you can share with us, so that, we learn further about these poems?
Thank you. Thank you very much for bringing to the foreground these two aspects. I'd like to add one more aspect to the comparative approach that I've been talking about before. It is very, very interesting to notice how in the England of the 18th century, those who were dealing with poetry or works concerning the working class were mainly intellectuals who took care and were very highly impressed by the conditions of these people, and they became a kind of, microphone of these needs and conditions, but they were intellectuals. The shift happens like in China, where the workers themselves are talking about their condition, and also in Italy. In Italy, there are workers who are describing their conditions, and the two authors who are working together and wrote the series about literature and industry, they are also intellectuals. So it's, this would also be an interesting topic of analysis, because, it's though the themes and the situations that are described are resonating with each other, still the approach might be slightly different due to this different background of the writers of these poems. Concerning Leo Spitzer and stylistic criticism, it is, a whole procedure, in fact. And you can imagine there is one point that I develop in my own way if thinking about Spitzer. Spitzer says that you should choose workers in your mother tongue. So I should work with works in Italian, and I'm working with works in Chinese. So, there is already a very big limitation in that. But still, I have to give myself a line. Otherwise, just because Chinese literature does not belong to me, nor for the language, nor for the background, I need to have a tool of investigation. Otherwise, I get completely lost. And that is the reason why I've chosen Spitzer, because Spitzer has given me this kind of something. So if I want to give you an example, a very, very direct example, there has to be something in a poem that has to attract your attention. Something that says, okay, hey, what is this? Something that creates what Spitzer calls a click. You know, oh, you kind of, you get astonished by this something. And from that something, you can start reading, your text, because we are talking about text, original text. So to give you an example, a very practical example, if I read one of the poems of these workers, and I find out that they use words of fruits, of trees that I do not know. That is something that brings me into the poetry. And if I start developing my reading around that something, then I find out that perhaps this author comes from Gansu, or comes from another region. And this helps me creating a more detailed background of the poem. And sometimes, they use words, or they refer to their dialect. And, all of these, or if the word iron, like, in the poem in the poems by Zheng Xiaoqiong, in which she uses very often the word iron. I've been writing a whole article about this in another paper. What is the reason for this iron to be there? You don't find iron in a poem. So especially when it is a Chinese poem, right? Where harmony is the most important thing, where no cruel or crude images are to be inserted. So when a woman poet talks about iron, which is something that attracts my imagination, I start working on that iron, and I start finding out whether there are any links in the poem that can help me getting to the use of this word, to the reasons behind this use. And then, according to Spitzer, if I can work from the detail to the entire text, and then from the entire text back to the detail, okay, that detail was chosen correctly, so to say. If I cannot find these links, then, I better change, the starting point of this analysis, because it might have been only occasionally that word was used, or that specific reference was used. So, it's a process. It's a process, and it is fascinating because Spitzer says, in order to have that click happen, you have to read the poem 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, as many times, until, of course, you have to like that poem, because he says, if you don't like it, it's better you don't do it. It's easy, he says, to speak badly about something, but it is not that very easy to speak positively about something and have reasons to explain that positive reading. And therefore, he invites the literary critic to read and read and read again and again until that, I like this piece, but okay, why do I like it? And then, you read and read until that click happens, and then, you can start your analysis. So, it's the process in a description is more or less this. And then, the way each of us can, develop it while reading implies all this. But it is very important for me to be able to work with this, because otherwise I would, very easily get lost.
No, that sounds fabulous. It's a very good it's very useful for you to explain that process to our audience, especially students in the audience, or those of us who don't really work with the genre of poetry, right? Yeah. And people teach, different genres very differently. And so that's very, very helpful. We have a question from Chen Xiong. You're here, so you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Do you want to do that, or do you want me to read your question? I'm happy to read your question. Let me read. So he's asking, contemporary Chinese workers are, uneducated, and yet they can write poems to reflect their current situation, which while the regime then claims that that these poems represent the working class, or these workers represent the working class. So what do you think? How does this reality reflect the contradiction between workers and power under the Chinese regime? That's the question.
Okay. Well, I would not say that these workers are totally illiterate. There is an amount of them that most probably is illiterate, and perhaps we can refer to those who are moving from the countryside where they've been working in the fields. And, you know, when the countryside is not productive anymore, they just move away. But many others are young students who have been completing their cycle of studies and could not find a job. And so, you know, they move to the countryside. What they say is that they write poetry when they finally can rest a while. And to write poetry is for them a way to just find a distance again from reality. And therefore, you know, it has a kind of soothing aim, as well as a relaxation effect. Thank you very much. Effect. So, you know, I would not say, so when we talk about workers being illiterate, then we have to make distinctions again. It is, and also, when you ask this question, there is another aspect that I would like to underline. When these young people write poetry in the factories, you know, they can sometimes have the possibility to get them published in the magazine of the factory, okay? This magazine is being read by the other workers also, you know, when they take some rest or somewhere, they don't have anything else to do, and so they just read something. And by the time these poets become a little bit more known among, you know, the other colleagues, so to say, there is also the possibility that the factory attracts them in the magazine of the factory, where they become editors, co-editors, whatever. That is a very peculiar aspect, because, for instance, Zheng Xiaoqiong herself, she's been working in different factories and finally became an editor of the Zuoping, this very important literary magazine in Guangdong province, in Canton, in Guangzhou. And she says, I mean, when I am doing this work, am I going to be still able to represent the condition of the workers? So this is a point, a boy, you know, from this point you start, you know, walking in another direction. And it is true that when you know, in some poems, you find the owner of the factory that is harassing the workers. A thing that should not happen in a socialist factory or in a socialist environment, but it happens because this is being denounced and described by the workers in their poetry. So it is very possible that this arises the conflictuality between the workers and actually the government. But by attracting these poets in the literary scene of the country, you know, the government obtains the other effect to cool down this kind of conflictuality. It is as usual in everything Chinese. Things are much more complicated than what they appear. But both aspects of conflictuality and at the same time attempt by the government to, you know, cool down are existing. Pizun, the village of Pizun, where groups of workers were living together and were giving rise to exhibition, museum of work of artworks of the workers. When it becomes too lively, then an action by the government is being brought forward to cool down continuously. So yeah, these two aspects coexist.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you for filling in the picture for us and also explaining the kind of the different dynamics or the two different dynamics of the relationship between workers' poetry and the state. We have two hands. First Michael Berry and then Taohua Wang.
Yes,
Thank
please.
you, Professor Tamburello, for the very informative lecture. I had a question about the reception of workers' poetry in Italy, and if you could say a little bit more about how deep these poems have kind of resonated with local readers, and maybe even more generally, what is the landscape of Chinese literature in Italian translation? What are the genres that are most welcomed by Italian readers? Is it fiction, nonfiction, poetry? Are there certain writers that have been particularly successful in the Italian market? I just thought that would be really informative and helpful for those of us who are more based here in the US to get a better sense of how Chinese literature has disseminated in Italy. Thank you.
Yeah, Giuseppe, let's get Dr. Changhua Wang's question also, because I'm cognizant of time, and then you can answer all the questions together.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very impressive talk, and I'm interested also in this kind of a comparison. I found you chose two poems to discuss that are all by women writers, women poets. Right, and also I could see in particular this Anne Joyce Anning poem. The poet has very clear self-consciousness as the class difference. So it becomes a question of the first working class consciousnness has been in China mostly dealt with as individually rather than as promoted as a class consciousness, even if the Constitution says working classes are leading force. Yeah, but at the same time, mostly my question is about this gender issue. Do you see poetry by migrant workers reflect the gender differences, or they can read just as if neutrally, genderly neutrally?
No. Thank you to both of you. I will answer the first one. In Italy, we have some centers for Chinese studies which are very, very, very traditional, like the University in Naples, that is back to the 16th century when the missionaries were coming back with their converted people, and they were teaching Chinese through the help of these young people. Imagine that in the 18th century, when the delegation of McCarthy went to China for the first time from England, their interpreters were taken from the school in Naples, from the Istituto Universitario Orientale in Naples. And so we also have a Venice. And in recent years, there's been an enormous development of these smaller centers like the one in Lecce and Palermo, or in Cagliari, or in Macerata, where they were, in Macerata, no, in Pesaro Urbino, a kind of smaller cities where the government has been wanting a development of Chinese studies there too. Now, from the time when I was a student, where my teachers would speak a very little bit of Chinese until nowadays. There's been a big change in the fact that the teachers of today, they do speak Chinese, they've been to China, they've been spending extensive periods in China. And therefore, the approach to literature has got a very, very big variety. Recently also in poetry, whereas poetry was a genre that was less tackled. There were only one or two people taking care of poetry. I must say that also thanks to a little bit of the works that I've been publishing, many young people have been coming closer to this to poetry, but in literature, in narrative, for instance, we have a big success of Yu Hua, of Mo Yan, this very Su Tong, all these very, very important names. They have also got a lot of success in Italy, but also many, many more things. There are very little festivals where they read works of Chinese authors. I mean, there is a lot of activity about that, much more than, when I was a student. So if you need a more specific detailed list, I can also supply it to you later on, but it's really very rich. And in China, the workers' poetry still belongs to a kind of niche of readers, but thanks also to the interest that this poetry has been producing in the West, also in China, there are now some scholars who are dealing with this poetry. So, it's still a little bit like this. It's a kind of, back and forth movement in this sense. And to get to the gender question, no, I think that in the workers' poetry, the two genres are, they encounter when it comes to the situations, to the feelings, but then the needs that are being proposed by men or women authors, they can be very, very different. In the case of the women workers, the sexual harassment is a very important issue. There is one of the poems that tells the story of this woman that goes back to the village after her death, and the family doesn't want to even give her a proper burial, because this would make the family dirty, because she has been also a prostitute while in these cities where she went for work. So no, I would say that the genders have different needs and have different ways of expressing themselves, which makes also this poetry much, much richer, in fact, in themes, not just the themes, but in ways of expressing in aspects that are being taken into consideration. No, they're quite different, in fact.
Wow, thank you so much, Professor Tamburello. Those were really helpful for us to learn about all these various. I mean, I have not done research on Chinese workers' poetry, and have only, of course, read poems of. There was that one famous poet who committed suicide at a Foxconn factory.
Yeah.
And those poems are widely known, but otherwise, many of us are not very well informed. And so thank you so much. This was very, very edifying. And, we look forward to hearing more and reading more. And thank you for bringing this amazing work to us.
Yeah. If
So
I can take 2 more minutes.
Yes, please.
I would like to do 2 things. One thing is I have taken with me my 2 publications concerning the workers' poetry that I would like to donate to your library in case you wish to have them.
Yes,
I just want to
absolutely.
do this because there are the Chinese texts next to it, so could just be useful. And the second thing I would like to do is to read just this poem of Xu Lizhi, who at the age of 24 committed suicide by throwing himself from one of the buildings of Foxconn. And just in memory of Xu Lizhi, especially because, for instance, at the moment in my country, one of the biggest problem is just the death of the workers at their working places. This was a decision that Xu Lizhi took, and so he did this extreme action. In Italy, deaths are happening because, of lack of good protection and, all this. And this is, again, another big problem that connects this poetry to actuality. So if you don't mind, I would like to read the 3 versions of Xu Lizhi. So it is, a screw fell to the ground. A screw fell to the ground in this dark night of overtime, plunging vertical, lightly clinking. It won't attract anyone's attention. Just like last time, on a night like this, when someone plunged to the ground, a screw fell to the ground. And this version is taken from the internet, The Poetry and Brief Life of a Foxconn Worker, Xu Lizhi, 1990 to 2014. The Italian version sounds like this. Ho ingoiato, sorry. I'm sorry, I did it wrong. Una vite è caduta per terra. Una vite è caduta per terra in questa notte di lavoro straordinario. È atterrata in verticale, con un suono leggero leggero. Non può attrarre l'attenzione di nessuno, proprio come quando prima di questa volta, in una notte simile, un uomo è caduto per terra. In Chinese it is 一个螺丝掉在地上，一个螺丝掉在地上，在这个加班的夜晚，垂直降落，轻轻一响，不会引起任何人的注意，就像在此之前某个响动的夜晚，有个人掉在地上。So, just in memoriam.
Yes, well,
Thank you all very much.
yeah, that is a very powerful way to end your lecture today. Thank you so much. Michael,
you all
did
very
you want
much.
to say something?
Pardon me?
Just I'll second our thanks to Professor Tamburello for a wonderful talk, and just encourage everyone, next Tuesday we do have another event, a lecture on Chips War. So we encourage you to continue to support the Center for Chinese Studies future events. And thanks everyone for your attendance and your participation.
Well, thank you. Thank you again, Professor Tamburello.
Thank you very much to all of you. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
I'll see you later. We'll see you guys soon.
Okay, see you later.
Yep. Bye.
I will not be at the dinner because I couldn't get coverage from my childcare issue.
No worries, Mike.